Get your tickets now for the Dog Stars.
It's no surprise how fast civilization can disappear. Out there, it's kill or be killed.
Jacob Elordi.
There are people out there. They need our help.
Josh Brolin.
Shoot first and inquire afterwards.
Margaret Qualley.
Okay, tough guy.
And Guy Pearce.
Arm up!
The Dog Stars, directed by Ridley Scott, in theaters August 28th. Get tickets now. Rated R. Under 17, not admitted without parents.
Amazon Health AI presents Painful Thoughts.
I can't stop scratching my downtown. Yeah, but I'm not itching to go downtown and tell a receptionist I'm here to talk about my downtown. Some things you'd rather type than say out loud.
There's no question too embarrassing for Amazon Health AI. Chat your symptoms and get virtual care 24/7. Healthcare just got less painful.
Plan B is a backup birth control option that's there for you when things don't go according to plan. It specifically works after unprotected sex and before pregnancy occurs by temporarily delaying ovulation. Plan B is available nationwide at all major retailers and through delivery apps like DoorDash. No ID, prescription, or age requirement. It's the #1 OBGYN recommended brand of emergency contraception, and it won't impact your future fertility. That's freedom to be. Use as directed.
Welcome back to DOCUFILES. I'm Paige.
And I'm Natalie.
Next week, we will be watching Sweet Bobby, My Catfish Nightmare from Netflix. For this episode, of course, we are discussing a toxic love story also from Netflix. And this one is popping off. Lots of people are talking about it. So Natalie and I are ready to join the conversation. We really end up with a story, which is sad to just call it story, but I don't have a better word because this is someone, and I mean Michelle's, a real life that got turned upside down. And it wasn't just in, let's call it the meat and the potatoes of the documentary where her life got turned upside down. This is years that this man, Ian Diaz, affected her life, tried to control her life, and ultimately landed her in prison for 88 days for something she never did. And he took such advantage of an innocent person that even she started questioning, what did I do? Where am I? She got to the point of waking up in a different state, not knowing where she was, needing psychiatric care. It's heartbreaking what happened to her at the hands of Ian Diaz and his accomplice, Angela Connell.
You're so right when you say that he took advantage of her, but he didn't just take advantage of her. He took advantage of his role as a U.S. Marshal. He took advantage of his situation or of his role in the situation as the fiance and husband of the supposed victim. He orchestrated so much and utilized his experience with law enforcement, his relationship with his wife. Everything he did was so manipulative. And I think that's something that the documentary did well when they were exploring this case. Mm-hmm. And something I did think about when we were watching this was, I can't believe it's only a feature. I can't believe it's not a docuseries, with 3, 4, 5 episodes, because I feel like there was so much happening that they definitely could have spent more time exploring even more of the nuances that were happening.
You could have had an episode of when Michelle and Ian were together. Mm-hmm. You could have had an episode about meeting Angela to the point of moving in and a fake twin pregnancy. And then the third episode of the arrest and the 88 days that Michelle was in prison from when they thought she was guilty to the point of finding out that Ian and Angela were actually the ones that are guilty. Although if you ask Leslie, Ian's best friend
who's in love with him, let's admit it. It's very clear.
She swears she's not, but what I found interesting is, an investigator definitely thinks that she is. And That's a trained professional. However, when she's talking about it, she goes, no, I'm not in love with him. But when she talks about it in this idea of three sides to a story, which I actually reference that a lot in life because it can be so true. But it's like, Leslie, this is your truth. You're either in love with him or not. So it leads this gray area. And to me, I feel like that maybe shows that there is this gray area in her mind. Maybe she's not like desperately in love with him to this day and building her life around it. But if he came to her and wanted to get together, he probably would.
Yeah.
She probably would, I mean.
I think maybe at one point in her life, she was in love with him. And maybe when she was getting interviewed for the documentary, she wasn't completely in love with him the way that she used to be. But there's a level of love that is present and had to be present for her to overlook the way that he treated the women in his life, the way that he, was so obviously guilty of what he did, and the fact that she refused to believe in his guilt. I think that there is, like you said, it is either you're in love with him or you're not. And obviously everyone, I honestly haven't heard of anyone who watched this documentary who doesn't think that she's not in love with him.
I think she also references that she does love him, that he's like family. So I think that kind of pulls in that gray area too of like, it's like, well, yeah, duh, like I've explained to you, I care extremely deeply for this person. It might not entirely be brotherly. It might not entirely be romantic, but there is a large amount of love for Ian to the point where she is blinded in believing what he did or that he was responsible for it, which it's just wild to end the documentary that way. It's just wild.
Especially considering the lengths that Ian went to frame Michelle. We're talking, they fabricated a sexual assault story. They posted, Craigslist ads for rape fantasies and blamed another woman for them. You know what I mean? So like the sexual deviant aspect of it that she's able to overlook is odd to me.
Could not have said that any better. I think it would make sense to rewind a bit. Ian meets Michelle in and around, I believe, 2014, 15, and they really hit it off. And then all of a sudden, he starts really pushing for some things in the intimacy arena that she wasn't really wanting to partake in. But because she hadn't dated a lot, I mean, this woman didn't even touch alcohol till 21, which, a lot of people start experimenting as teenagers or early in college. She was 21. She waited until the law allowed it. And that's just who she was. She grew up in the church. She really just had like a naivete and an innocence about her, which there should be nothing wrong with. Ian was pushing and pushing and pushing Michelle to have intimate relations with another man, and he wanted to watch. Again, Michelle did not want to do that. But then she starts questioning herself. Hey, I haven't really dated. Maybe this is just some people's fantasies and something you have to do. So she gets worn down by him, even though he does this back and forth of like, oh no, it's just talk. I'm just sort of joking a little bit about it. But then he would push and push and push again. It's like, wait, like, are you really joking about this? Okay, fine. Like, I'll do it. And he did, and it broke her. She hates that she did that.
It broke her. And I don't know if you caught this. She said the day that it happened was February 14th. She didn't call it Valentine's Day, but
I heard that. Yes.
That can't be a coincidence. He chose Valentine's Day to have her do this sexual act that she didn't want to do, but he bullied her into doing. And it has scarred her not only from, what happened, but like for future Valentine's Days.
Forever. She can probably never think about that date without thinking about that. She can take it back. She can take that date back for herself, but that's all she can do because that date is forever scarred.
It feels especially manipulative.
It really does. And I have to wonder again if he used training as a U.S. Marshal for that. I mean, and when he gets with Angela, okay, which by the way, Angela, no.
But by the way, though, in the documentary, they do talk about him having like an upbringing where it was like possibly influenced the way he was, didn't they? talk about like he had like a tough childhood.
He
So like
might
that
have.
coupled with like the tactics he learned and
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah.
Just a
I
thought.
mean, but as an adult, get your shit together.
Yeah,
I don't
no,
care what your
I mean,
childhood was
trust
like.
me, I'm not.
No, I know you're on my
Yeah.
side, so that's why I'm like, you know what? Wah. You know,
Wah.
like maybe if he was a little more innocent.
Yeah,
whatever,
no, he's not.
but-
Yeah.
Okay. I'm going to kind of restart and then because I kind of want to take us to Angela's past.
I cannot wait to talk about her.
Okay, yeah,
Please.
let's bring it in. Let's bring her in. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Dee. Here we go. And Angela's past, by the way, is going to be 2013-14. And okay, so I'm going to say, okay. I mean, I still do have to wonder once again if he was using his training as a U.S. Marshal and investigative tactics, manipulative tactics. He was definitely using psychological tactics to break her down to the point where that happened. Now, these two, I also want to reference, like time-wise, they were together for the most part.
It is what it is.
They were together for the most part in 2015 through, I think, until about August of 2015. And then Ian meets Angela. But we can't talk about them being together until we talk about Angela's past. So I think we should definitely get to that.
Okay, so really quick, should we have mentioned, I'll just do it like this. I cannot wait to talk about Angela, but I do want to address something really quick that while Michelle and Ian were together, they did eventually buy a condo. And I know you're thinking, Natalie, why does that matter? It does matter later on in the story.
Yes, it does.
And we have to note that the way that condo was purchased was Michelle put down the bulk or the entirety of the down payment. So it was all of her money. She cleared out her savings to purchase this condo that was in both of their names. And when they broke up, because of the way that Ian was essentially surveilling Michelle, he ended up putting cameras in the condo to watch her. He would track her location on her phone. She had to escape while Ian's friend Leslie was there.
She knew he wouldn't do anything while Leslie was there. And I think that speaks so much to the relationship that we were talking about earlier, too.
Mm-hmm.
She knew.
She literally had to escape and drove off and drove into the distance, not knowing where she was going. And that's where that mental break happened, where she didn't even know where she was.
Well, she drove to her parents' house, but he kept harassing and harassing and harassing her. And this is where a very important email, two very important emails come from in or around September 2015. Yeah. And this is where two very important emails come from September 2015. This is the beginning of Michelle's break.
Mm-hmm.
She is telling him that she's no longer allowing him to have control. She's trying to get her power back. But the pressure that Ian is putting on her is too much. And she wasn't even going to be safe at her parents' house anymore. But she ends up, yes, in a psychotic break, just driving as far as she could and comes to in Arizona. And thank goodness people found her. Now, I don't know how long she was at her parents' house Now, I don't know how long she was at her parents' house before she went and drove into Arizona, but it wasn't very long. I mean, we're talking the max days, weeks, because the emails were September. They broke up in August.
Yeah.
Or so he says during one of the times where Anaheim PD is visiting he and Angela when they're living in said condo. Ian also selling that condo in 2016 and not giving Michelle a dime is disgusting. But you know how she got her money was later on when she sued Anaheim PD and she got a great amount of what's the word I'm looking for? Not grievance. I can't think of the word, but you know what I mean. She got restitution.
I don't know if that's the
Probably
word.
not the word.
I did see how much she got. So,
and she got a pretty penny for that. There we go. Just so I have another take.
Let's start here. 1.795 million. In fact, I found an article online from California Goldberg Law that talks about how they were co-counsel and helped settle this, what they call groundbreaking civil rights case that happened, with Michelle and the Anaheim PD. But she is not named in the article. Hold on.
Interesting. I wonder if she asked not to be.
Oh, she actually is. Hold on. She wasn't named initially they kept it pretty vague it's like a blog post on their website, but they do have the actual legal paperwork uploaded as well, which does say Michelle Suzanne Hadley. So we do know it, in fact, is Michelle who won that settlement.
I think she should have gotten a mill for every 10 days she was in prison. She should have gotten at least like 8 to 10. This is ridiculous. She had nothing to do with it, and their main evidence was 2 emails that she sent him to try to get him off of her back, to the point where she was close and then had a bit of a psychotic break. Like, it was either dissociative or a fugue-like state where she was just completely out of body because she was under so much pressure from this man and she could not escape him. And that's essentially what she was trying to do, right? She gets in the car and she starts driving. You're trying to escape. Her body was in a state that I hope none of us talking or listening right now ever have to feel or understand.
Yeah.
Personally.
Yeah, she was literally running for her life and lost her mind partly while she was doing that.
Yeah.
Thankfully, she was able to, like you said, a family did find her and get her treatment. But it was still a long road for her to clear her name because, as we do learn in the documentary, when, you know, this whole thing between Ian and Angela and Michelle comes out, initially Michelle's painted as the villain, like this super villain with, you know, scheming abilities and, you know, thugs on her side. It truly becomes so much bigger than Michelle ever thought something like this could be made into.
Absolutely. And now we promised we were going to talk about Angela's past. Let's rewind. We don't know much before 2013. But this is when, at a bar in Huntington Beach, California, in Orange County, she meets a man named Jason. And they quickly start a relationship, probably almost about as quick as she and Ian do later on in 2015-16. He was smitten. She was sweet. Now, everybody kind of references her as this sweet woman, and she might have been nice. Maybe she was, but that doesn't make what she did okay, ever. But he references her being sweet and beautiful, and he was just immediately attracted to her, and they began a relationship. They started living together. Well, it mirrors what Ian's, quite frankly. It really does.
It mirrors her relationship with Ian in the fact, too, that she sought out someone in law enforcement. This ex-boyfriend that you're talking about was a police officer, and she told him that she had, you know, her profession was somewhat tied to the law as well as a lawyer, I believe.
Yes, she said she was a lawyer, which is not true in any capacity.
But we find out a lot of things that she said weren't true.
Including having cancer. She fakes cancer. I don't believe they say what type, but she starts wearing beanies and tucking her hair up. She sends him a picture from chemo. She wanted to do this on her own, right? This is so reminiscent of Scamanda. If you have not listened or watched that episode of ours yet, by watch, I mean on YouTube, go watch that, because Scamanda was a wild story, and she's taking a page from Amanda C. Riley's book, or I guess vice versa, because this is before Amanda C. Riley was doing it.
That's so funny that you say that you were having flashbacks to Scamanda, because that's literally who I thought of. And I just remember thinking to myself, I didn't realize there were that many people who faked having cancer.
Isn't it sick? It's
sick.
So
sick. And it is probably the most evil thing I think one of the most evil things someone can do, because it just is so like unnecessary. And like, what did she get out of it? And I think that was what I was struggling with when we were learning about all the lies she told this man and all of his friends, who eventually do have what someone on Reddit called a liar intervention. That was probably my favorite.
It's exactly what they had. It was a group of people. Jason refers to it as their circle.
Yeah.
Including this wonderful woman. I think she was hilarious.
She was the gem of the documentary to me.
I love her so much. She had a lot to say about her, and she was clocking the cancer around the same time that Jason was. She starts noticing she's tucking her hair up a lot in this beanie. Maybe she's covering hair loss, but she's like, got more hair than I do.
Yeah, that's what she said. That bitch has more hair than me. And I remember laughing because she wasn't wrong. Like, it looked like the way that they were talking about it, because they did actually record this liar intervention. It didn't look like she was that bald. Angela is who I'm referencing.
Did she have a wig on in that? Can we talk about the hair? Like, it looked like maybe she was putting a wig over her normal hair to start not having to wear, like, beanies from the hair loss. I don't know, though, because there's no way your hair would be that long that quickly from chemo. They weren't together that long. Like,
No.
it was like a max a year or two. So this intervention, it started because, of course, again, that woman was clocking it. But Jason, more importantly, said, okay, if you want to go to these appointments alone, I understand, but like, just, send me a picture of you at UCI, which is specifically where she mentioned she was receiving chemotherapy treatment. Send me a picture, or like she sent him a picture from there, and it was her POV, and it was a bag of what seems to be, chemotherapy IV, and he decides, I'm going to search for this picture. Like, as he starts clocking up, maybe probably other things that are making him believe that she is lying. And he said he had to go through a lot of pages of chemotherapy pictures on what I assume is Google, but he found it. And I think it was, if I'm remembering correctly, it was linked to a blog of somebody who really was receiving treatment. Now, then this lady on the other side, she calls UCI directly and says, hey, I'm supposed to pick up my friend, Angela Connell. I don't know how the heck to find her, though, and I can't get a hold of her. Can you let me know, like, how do I pick her up? And they're like, we don't have a patient by that name.
And because
legally they can say that, and we've never
had a patient by that name. Yeah. So
smart of her. So smart. She reminds me of, she's the Lisa.
Yes.
Of Scamanda.
Yes. Yeah. Absolutely.
Amazing.
And,
we love her.
We all need truth seekers in our lives, like Lisa and this woman. And thank goodness they were able to call her out on it. And I don't feel like it was aggressive, but they certainly made their point of, like, you can't just lie to people, and you can't just tell the lies that you're doing. Like, what I mean? Nobody should lie the way that you're lying, and you're going to be held accountable. And she, would not admit to being a liar when she was confronted by it. They even asked her, just show us your port where you received treatment. Show us your port.
Specifically, she wanted to see that damn port.
She chased her out of the apartment or condo, wherever they were.
She had those big old pink fake fingernails tapping on that window going, show us your port. Show us your port, you liar. Show us your port. And you could see in the reflection of the window, you can see her phone and her hands and her pink fingernails. I'm like, this woman, I love her. But she's pissed.
Yeah, she's pissed.
I think because she's lied to, but she cut her hair. She hashtagged Warrior Angela or Angela Warrior to something to that effect. She was in deep with her. So I think that was coming from a place of hurt too. Like, do not deceive me. Yeah.
And I don't know if you noticed, as she's running out of that house, one of her ex-boyfriend's friends does go with her. Like, she is sort of standing between Angela and the woman asking to see the port, saying, like, leave her alone. Like,
I'm
she
just going to take her with me.
Yeah. I'm just going to. And I have to wonder, start here. And to me, that must have been a really hard place to be in, because you believe this woman that you kind of know has cancer, and now she's being confronted and being told that she doesn't have it. But to me, that shows that Angela was always able, even in the face of her lies being uncovered, to have someone believe in her. And I think that just shows how manipulative she was on her own, and those manipulation tactics didn't just go away when she ended that relationship. She brought them with her when she started dating Ian. And it just so happens that Ian's also extremely toxically manipulative, and, birds of a feather flock together, I guess. But it makes me wonder, like, what happened in this universe for two people who are so alike like that to come together and form this unholy union, because they do end up getting married.
She liked being the victim. And I think we're dealing with a little bit of narcissistic or histrionic personality disorder. We want attention, and we don't care how or where we're getting it. And it just goes to show, especially since she maintained the lie in that intervention, it didn't really matter to her that these people were now gone. She now had this friend and whoever else she was going to find in the future to go ahead and be the victim of XYZ with again. And in this case, she meets Ian and becomes the victim of a, quote, crazy ex-fiance who wants to have her raped and her child killed. I mean, there were awful things that they were emailing from this email that Ian and or Angela had created based on an email, those two important emails I was mentioning from Michelle before the break, or like as this break was beginning, the psychotic break. They based it off those emails.
They studied her verbiage and like
they used Lilith, who is a sort of mythical and or biblical character that is a woman who didn't submit to Adam and supposedly turned demonic and created a demon and like gave birth to like demon entities. I don't know the mythology of it a lot, but I think there's a lot of controversy around her. I think there's some people believe in that story and some people don't.
I've heard of Lilith, but that was like the deepest I had heard of her backstory. Do you know what I mean?
Same.
I wanted to touch on something, and I don't want to go back up too far, but I do want to address it. I thought it was an astute observation that you made when you said that Angela truly did what she did because she liked to be the victim. And I had mentioned when her and Ian got together, they were very similar in their like machinations in the way that they were able to manipulate people. But I think the distinction between the two of them is Ian does it for power and Angela does it for sympathy
and attention. Bingo.
And attention. And that's why they work so well together, because he was able to like further manipulate this manipulator and
reinforce it with attention from police, from himself. She probably started believing it was real, to be honest. I believe Angela has something truly wrong with her. I think Ian is taking advantage and manipulating and being a really horrible human being. I think Angela, of course, was ready to jump onto that and doesn't get any excuses, but I think she has something more mentally wrong with her, whereas he's just like playing this power role. I don't think he would be a U.S. Marshal or interested in that if he didn't want power and control, right?
And totally. And I think we can even just look at the timeline of the relationship to point at how he was wanting to control the dynamics between the two of them from the jump, because they meet online in January of 2016 and get married a month later. And not to say that everyone who gets married at warp speed is being manipulated. I'm saying in this particular situation, this man saw a woman who he could manipulate and use and control and locked her down within a month because that was his power move.
It was within weeks that he proposed to her and she moved in, and months when she says, "Hey, I'm pregnant, not just pregnant, but with twins."
Okay. You know what's so funny too? Start here. I don't want to say what's funny. I didn't mean to cut you off either.
No, it's time.
The twin thing too, by the way, in the documentary, it isn't outright said initially that the twin pregnancy is fabricated. We're led to believe that she potentially is pregnant with twins. And it's something that caught my attention because there's a few body cam footage scenes of her talking to police officers when she's supposedly pregnant with twins. And she has the flattest stomach I've ever seen. And I just remember thinking, like, obviously every woman carries each pregnancy differently.
She's tall and lean, so it's like, okay. But twins, come on, you're going to blow up.
A multiples pregnancy where you're supposedly several months pregnant, it just didn't add up. It didn't look like she was pregnant at all.
Here's the question I have, and listeners, pipe up in the comments, please. And I'm going to say sound off. And listeners, sound off in the comments on Spotify or YouTube, please. Did Ian know the pregnancy was fake or not? I don't know, because it ends up being a catalyst to him trying to frame Angela. He calls Leslie and goes, "Hey, Angela, guess what? The sonogram picture is fake. She's not pregnant with twins."
Well, and then
it goes downhill from there.
Well, and then he somehow was able to find the pee stick. I can't think of what it is right now. The pregnancy tests were fabricated as well. They were drawn on with marker. That to me was a little bit of a red flag. Like, you didn't look at it more closely. You know what I mean? Like, you didn't go with her to any of the ultrasounds. And
she knew how to do that from cancer, though. She could have manipulated that, right? From the fake cancer, I should say. Wait, let me repeat that.
Yeah.
She knew how to get somebody not to go to appointments with her. This one might have even been easier because it's not even cancer or one that people might want like a ton of support at every single one. I know a lot of my friends that, pop into an appointment really quick when they're pregnant. And then, of course, the big ones, they have the support that they need. Well, so I wonder, like, she could have been manipulating him in that way. He could have met his match.
I mean, yeah, we know she's not afraid of lying. Cancer, attorney, pregnancy, ultrasound, twins, like everything that basically comes out of her mouth is a lie. And it wouldn't be a surprise to me if maybe initially he was also a victim of her lying. But I think he is smart enough. I hate to give him credit for that, but I do think he is not a dumb guy. And I think it probably didn't take him long to realize that things were adding up. And maybe he was holding those cards close to the vest or chest or whatever the saying is.
They were only together for 8 total months, by the way. 8 months. That's what Leslie says. The 8 months she was in his life. So it wasn't very long. So I think you're right. I think all of this, regardless if he knew or not that the pregnancy was fake, it could have been used as a tactic to create more sympathy during the email and Craigslist ad attacks.
Look, this is my pregnant wife who's being targeted by and harassed by my crazed ex-fiance. Like, you know what I mean? You're putting a woman who's already in not a fragile state, but like you're more vulnerable when you are pregnant, and she's supposedly carrying twins, which is a high risk scenario. It added flavor to their story they were trying to sell.
And he kept doing this with every email. Now, we referenced Lilith, and I want to be able to clarify more because so often in our conversations, we get like excited everywhere. But this email that Michelle originally sent, the two emails that Michelle originally sent were from an email that referenced Lilith. And then the emails that Angela starts getting are Lilith is truth. And this man who the documentary calls Rick catches a listing on Craigslist for somebody that's going by Lilith is truth that is asking for role play of a sexual assault, rape scenario. They are going to leave the doors unlocked, and they're just really pushing for it to happen quickly. Now, he is a firefighter, and his job matters to him, and he wants to know that this is consensual because he could understand he could get into a really bad situation if this turns on him, right? Where it looks like he was truly doing that without consenting people.
I mean, he could also get killed if he walked into the wrong house and was thought to be attacking somebody.
Right. Now, he voice IDs, and it kind of works out. Again, seems very excited and ready for this. I'm going to have the gate unlocked and the door unlocked. Keep going, even if I say no. This is what police are hearing from Rick This is what police are hearing from Rick when they finally get to interview him because they find him. Takes him a while, but they find him. And thank goodness he tells them, hey, I showed up to the house after the voice ID and I see the name Ian Diaz. That kind of freaked me out. I don't want a partner who also lives there to be unconsenting. And like you mentioned, they could shoot me. They could just be pissed off. They could, like, that's not what I'm here for. I was here for like a consenting scenario and that's it. So he left. Thank goodness.
That could have saved his life because we do later see body cam footage of Ian standing at the front door with his hand on his gun as his one hand on his gun and one hand on his badge as the Anaheim PD roll up. And he goes, sorry, I'm a U.S. Marshal. I was fearing for my wife's safety.
Hey, look, I'm one of you guys. And puts that badge right on the table. I think that Rick dodged a bullet.
Literally.
Because if Ian and Angela were willing to do what they were doing to Michelle, who he was with for 2 years, who he bought a condo with, who he was engaged to, imagine what he would do to a stranger he doesn't know that is willing to participate in a weirdo rape scenario. Like, imagine the little regard for that person's life, who, by the way, is a firefighter in a local city. Like, come on. Which I think it's a weird thing, but like, clearly he was taking the right steps to ensure consent, but it also kind of scares me about Rick as to why do you want that scenario? Like,
well, wait, I didn't know that he was a firefighter. Did I totally miss that in the
he
documentary?
says it very quickly, but that's why it matters to him. He's a city official, if you will.
Yeah.
Like, no, let me read that. I mean, that's why it matters to him. That's a job you could lose if you are participating in like fake scenarios that involve breaking the law. Like,
well, it just disturbs me too, because obviously firefighters fight fires, but they also respond to medical calls. They're in people's houses all the time. This is coming from someone who has a good portion of her family in that profession. So I'm familiar with what they do on the day to day. And it is scary to me to think that this man who has these fantasies is responding to calls in people's homes when they're in distressing situations. Obviously, he didn't go through with it. I don't know if he's ever gone through with it, but he sought it out. He tried to go through with it. It just seems odd.
I'm just glad that
unsettling.
he was smart enough to put into place enough. I'm just glad that he was smart enough to put into place enough markers of consent. That to me really, really mattered. And I hope if he ever does continue to seek that out, that is something that he continues to do. He is a dad as well. He mentions that in his faceless interviews. So part of him has this scenario that he was interested or is interested in, but the other part of him is smart enough to know not only for himself, but the consent of the other person. Voice IDing, looking for markers where he's about to enter and stuff, but it's still like you're going to put yourself in that position no matter how much consent you try to mark.
Let's talk about that voice ID moment really quick. That's something that the Anaheim PD doesn't really zero in on at the time, but when this is eventually reinvestigated by the U.S. Marshal Service, they start to call into question, wait a minute, if Ian was the one pulling the strings and sending out these emails, but Rick talked to a woman on the phone when he voice ID'd, when he actually, we learn, spoke to Angela, that's where we start to realize they were working together. And that was an
100%.
extremely important realization in the investigation for everyone.
Yes. Plus, the fake sonogram is where all of this starts to fall apart. Ian's definitely trying to pin it on Angela, and she does get arrested. So she's arrested for this. And then, of course, they realize Michelle didn't do it. She's released from prison after 88 days. There's definitely a ton of media that luckily is covering it and backtracking all the horrific coverage that they erroneously did before, saying that Michelle was responsible.
At that point, the damage is done. I mean, her family business was destroyed. People didn't want to work with people who had a daughter who supposedly did everything that Michelle was said to have done, which we know she didn't do.
And her dad was her staunch supporter, which I loved to see. He was out there the day she got arrested. Excuse me, you're arresting my daughter because why? No, that's not right. He wasn't going to let this die. If they hadn't figured it out, the investigators, he was not, her dad, Mr. Hadley, was not going to let this happen.
And thank God for him and for DOJ Special Agent Jason Higley, who eventually starts investigating this case, because once a U.S. Marshal is involved, they have to do their own investigation. They have to figure out, what happened here? We want to make sure all the I's are dotted, the T's are crossed. Like, we want to make sure everything is above board. And, while they're investigating, they examine the police body cam footage. They notice that, Ian sounds anxious. He sounds like he's coaching Angela in these interactions she's having with Anaheim PD. Upon further investigation, they also find physical evidence on his government-issued laptop where he was having correspondence on Craigslist with his personal email address as Lilith with Rick. So that proves that no, Ian is as much involved in this situation, if not more, than Angela.
He was also able to get straight to the Craigslist posting. He found it so quickly to discover that that's the Craigslist post that Michelle had posted, which the special agent was like, let me see, what do we call him? The other U.S. Marshal?
Special agent, DOJ special agent.
It was.
But I mean, yeah.
That was
Yeah,
Special Agent. Which Special Agent Higley was saying this would be like 1 in a million, where he would be able to so quickly know exactly where the post was, what that post was. Again, we're talking Craigslist.
I mean, he didn't even go through like multiple pages of links and click on anything. He just happened to know the exact posting.
He wasn't even hiding it at that point. He had such confidence that he was going to get away with what he was getting away with. And as it started slipping, he gets Angela out of the way, hoping for her to be the scapegoat fully, even though she was guilty as part 2. So I use scapegoat loosely. And luckily, once they interview Michelle as part of this investigation as well, they realize exactly who he is. She talks about the control that you I don't want to say so. Okay. She talks about the control he tried to have over her in the relationship that we referenced earlier. She talks about the psychotic break. She talks about the 2 emails that she did send that they used to basically say, you have these 2 emails and then a whole nother email about Lilith and all of this. No, I don't want to say all of this. She talks about the 2 emails that she sent and references, I didn't send the other ones, but these are the 2 that I sent from anything that had to do with Lilith. And to the Special Agent Higley, this was a whole new light on this, because instead of showing Lilith, then a new Lilith email, they're kind of similar in nature, it was no longer evidence that Michelle had done it. It was clearer evidence that Ian was pretending to be Michelle, pretending to be Angela. And in the emails and the Craigslist ads, this evidence was now seen in a new light to Special Agent Higley, because no longer did it seem to prove Michelle did all of this. It was, oh my God, Ian.
It's so much more complicated.
It was so much more complicated. Ian is actually pretending to be Michelle, who was trying to harm Angela, and then other instances of Ian pretending to be Michelle, pretending to be Angela, asking for a rape scenario. So there was a lot of complex twists and turns, but once they unbraided what had been going on, it was very clear. And he was also arrested, which, by the way, he was arrested on the same day that Michelle gave birth to her daughter.
And let's see. Here we go. Which feels so appropriate, because Michelle started a whole new chapter of her life on that day, and so did Ian. But it wouldn't be for 2 more years that he was eventually convicted of cyberstalking, perjury, and obstruction of federal matter. And eventually he was sentenced to 10 years in prison. So that's where he is currently. That's why he didn't participate in the documentary, which, why start here? Which I kind of would have liked to have heard his side of things. I don't know if we would have gotten the truth, but I would have liked to have had a peek behind the curtain and, had just some insight into why. Why did you waste your time and hurt so many people? Why? But with people like Ian and like Angela, that's just sort of what they do. They hurt people and they leave people, as casualties everywhere they go.
I think it has to do with exactly what Michelle explained to the special agent when she was interviewed after being released from prison, and that he wanted to control her to the point where she had to escape, and she did successfully escape. And she did successfully escape, and that made Ian go beyond his psychotic controlling self to the point where he wanted to hurt her and have her, quote, arrested and in a padded room. And that was also, by the way, something else that stuck out to the special agent within this new lens of, it was so clear his motive was to have her arrested. Now, they didn't necessarily entirely have the why until they interviewed Michelle, but they knew he wants her arrested. He kept on saying it.
But he didn't win in the end. She's living her best life. Like you said, she had a daughter in 2021, and she's quoted in the documentary saying she's raising this beautiful little girl. Start here. And she's quoted in the documentary saying, "Raising this beautiful little girl is my fairy tale ending. I think it is happily ever after. I'm not a princess, but I get to be the hero in my own story."
I loved that quote. I actually took that quote down as well. And what a
great minds.
Amazing, great minds. What a wonderful spot to leave it here. Until our next episode, make sure to follow us on all of our socials, subscribe on YouTube, at the Murder Diaries Pod and Murder Diaries Podcast.
And you hear it every week, but don't forget our schedule. Mondays, Tragic Hollywood. Tuesdays, DOCUFILES, which both are on YouTube now. So go watch us if you want. And Thursdays, a true crime case that needs your attention. Thanks.